接下来我们邀请到的是新加坡稳定币发行商 StraitsX 的 Mr. Tianwei Liu，将会与大家一起来探讨的议题是 AI 重塑全球金融格局 StraitsX 的稳定币创新实践。Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to welcome Mr. Tianwei Liu, the CEO and co-founder at StraitsX, bring us the global innovation, the future of stablecoins-powered industry. Let's welcome Mr. Liu.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tianwei. I'm the co-founder and CEO of StraitsX from Singapore itself. First and foremost, I want to thank AWS and the organizers, and it's an honor to be here today to share with you guys about our learnings over the last few years. But also, want to thank the audience, which is all of you here, for coming here, being the guy that's holding you guys up between lunch, for hearing you need to talk more about the future of stablecoin and how that's going to empower a lot of different industry that we are seeing. So to first start off, to just set a baseline, right? The stablecoin that we are discussing here are basically digital currency designed to maintain a stable value by being pegged to an external reference here. And to be more specific, I think we are all talking more about fiat-backed, 100% reserve-backed stablecoin over here. With the more prominent ones are the one backed to US dollars that you guys probably heard of, USDC, USDT. But we are very happy to share that it's particularly pride here at StraitsX. We are one of the pioneers for issuing non-US dollars backed stablecoin out of Singapore itself. First with XSGD, which is the Sing dollars one-to-one backed stablecoin since 2020, and of course more recently XUSD, which is our US dollars one-to-one backed stablecoin that have just went on Binance and over the last 3 months has hit about 80 million of circulating supply. So as I mentioned earlier on, this itself is an exciting space. I think the media coverage around this, I probably do not have to dance it, but we have been in this industry for quite a while. And I think the most excitement, probably the first number that a lot of people are seeing, and I heard a lot of folks in the field today, in the audience today, are coming from the financial industry. The biggest number that most people are excited is about the circulating supply. I just checked this morning, as of total, the fiat-backed stablecoin is about $250 billion in terms of circulating supply. The largest one, of course, being Tether, still about 150 to 160 billion. And the one that most people heard about the most recently with the Circle IPO in June, hopefully some people make good money over there, but in general, that's hitting about 60 to 70 billion dollars of circulating supply, right? But beside the circulating supply, right, as a player in the industry in payments, which I'm going to share a bit about for the last 10 years itself, what actually got a lot of payments folks really excited is about the adoption and the on-chain transaction that we are actually seeing right now. So these are data you can actually get from a public blockchain. Just in 2024 alone itself, stablecoin transaction value have hit about 15.6 trillion in just a month, right? So that itself, if you understand and compare that to what some of the largest networks are doing, like Visa and Masters, is about 119% of what MasterCard is doing, and about 200% of what 119% of what Visa is doing, and 200% of what MasterCard is doing. So that itself is definitely something underlyingly really exciting to the payment folks. And of course, today we want to dig a bit further why you think that kind of adoption is actually happening. So I think the killer feature that is probably already been recognized over the last few years by all the industrial players here, the main use case of stablecoin, the killer feature itself is in cross-border payment, right? Folks here probably have experience doing some of that through fintech, but underlyingly, we know how the world cross-border system underlying works. SWIFT is still the #1 used system for banks and FI, that might have provided intermediary services to you guys to basically facilitate cross-border transaction itself. And the folks that are used to how it works, is usually pretty expensive. Take a couple of days to settle, right? The days like T+1, T+2 are quite common. And you need a receiving bank account on the other end. And I think the most frustrating for a lot of us in the fintech space is it only works during banking hours, right? Usually between 9 to 5, and depending on the time zone that you're in some countries, your bank might be a bit nicer and extend it to 12 hours to 12 midnight for you. But you're really, restricted by the way that the banks and around the world and globally actually work because of the large number of intermediary in the system. And this is where stablecoin have found itself as a technology innovation that brought about a lot better approach to the same problem itself, right? For folks that have done a stablecoin transfer before, depending on the chain that you use, you realize that you can actually do this at a fraction of the cost, right? And more importantly, I think that's where most of my background is in engineering. A lot of folks will be most excited is that you're actually transacting at the speed of the internet, right? It means to say transactions are processed in the minutes. You can actually transfer it to any blockchain address, which a developer can easily create or an institution can easily host. And at the same time, the uptime is 24/7, right? No longer have to be restricted by banking hours and only working on weekdays itself. So this itself is where we are seeing why the industry is super excited about the capability of stablecoin to reimagine cross-border payments. And it's not just the industry folks that have been excited about this. I think regulators around the world have been seeing this for the last few years itself. Of course, the most landmark thing is just what happened last month. President Trump itself signed into law and the passing of Genius Act itself, which gives clarity around the regulation around stablecoin, especially fiat-backed stablecoin, which I just mentioned earlier on itself. And this is a trend that you're seeing globally. Closer to where we are, just in Hong Kong itself, in May of this year, the HKMA, together with the Hong Kong Parliament, have already passed the stablecoin bill. And this will also establish how a Hong Kong-backed, dollar-backed stablecoin can be actually issued. And you're already seeing since August itself, multiple sandbox experiments are kicking off itself. But this itself is not just what have happened recently. If you look back just in time, just last year itself, in Euro itself, MiCA compliance framework have actually already been established since May 2024. And somewhere closer to my heart, which is where I came from in Singapore, Singapore have already established, the MAS has already established a stablecoin framework since June 2024 itself, and StraitsX has been very fortunate to be recognized and to be in early compliance of this framework itself, and we have been issuing our Sing dollars and our US dollars backed stablecoin out of this regime. So you will see something common, however, across all the regulation itself, which helps to really brings about much more adoption, especially from FI, right? The three main things typically falls under first, these are all 100% fiat-backed stablecoin. They usually require you to hold it in the assets of the same currency in high-quality liquid assets of less than 12 weeks or so, right? And they will always require you to have segregated bank account, and then the funds are bankruptcy remote, always redeemable one-to-one, which is very similar to what a lot of e-money and a lot of folks that have been working in this space will be recognizable and actually understand how it works, right? And of course, standard international AML and KYC practices are strictly enforced, such as travel rules and the needs for actually doing screening on transactional level, which brings about the kind of adoption that you are starting to see coming from more major institutions. So it brings us to where StraitsX is at, right? We have been, been known. Most of the folks probably know us as the issuer of Sing dollar stablecoin XSGD since 2020, hopefully. But now recently with XUSD, which is the US dollar stablecoin that we just issued. But if you look at the background of the company, which I founded since 2016 itself, we are actually a regulated major payment institution with operation of more than 250,000 offline merchants across Singapore and Indonesia for the last 10 years itself. So this is not new to us. We have been trying to figure out how to use it in the more practical use cases where real-world payments has been a key hallmark of the journey that we have been going through for the last few years itself. So the tagline with our rebranding has been focusing on what we call stablecoin rails for real-world payment itself. Which brings us to our capability, right? So we play a dual role here, right? Besides being known as a stablecoin issuer, we would like to actually be known as not just another stablecoin issuer, right? Because what actually happens on the ground is we have been real-world payment players for the last 10 years itself, and we provide the underlying capability and distribution for this kind of real-world use cases we are seeing. And our SMEs and clients are coming to us primarily for 3 different use cases, which we've been focusing on right now. First and foremost, the simplest to understand is to just accept and send and mint and redeem of stablecoin, right? Another big part here is what we had piloted since last year, which I'm going to talk a bit about with Grab Alipay, our cross-border wallet-to-wallet QR code payment powered by stablecoin. And the third view is related to our capability to issue Visa-powered prepaid card itself, backed by stablecoin itself, which I'm going to talk about a bit more. And around the regulation and our stablecoin standards itself, right? Being regulated by the MAS itself means to say that we have attained a much higher bar in terms of regulatory compliance, and we've been very, very fortunate to be recognized to be in compliance for the upcoming single currency stablecoin regime, which MAS is about to pass. And all our assets are backed one-to-one by high-quality liquid assets, in this case usually in treasury bill of the same currency itself, that have short-term lease of less than 12 weeks for liquidation itself. And we are required to be audited more than twice a month itself, one at a fixed date and one at a random itself. And we are chain agnostic, right? So the stablecoin itself has been established and issued on BNB, on Ethereum, on Solana, and many more, as you can see soon. But this is where we are doing things a bit differently, right? As I mentioned, we started this journey of issuing stablecoin because we see a real-world use cases as a major payment service provider across Singapore and Indonesia, right? So when we first started on this journey, we realized and we basically set out that we think that you need three major things before major adoption of stablecoin, mainstream adoption can actually happen. First and foremost, you need to be regulatory compliant. This is something that we always say, for big money, for institutions to come in, being regulatory compliant is absolutely important. But actually, if you realize this, being regulatory compliant is a spectrum here. It's quite easy to be not illegal, right? Because you can easily establish a trust company and issue a stablecoin. But we spend years trying to work with regulators to ensure that we are not just not illegal, but we are fully compliant with local regime, and very fortunate that MAS and Singapore, being a tier 1 jurisdiction in this part of the world, has supported our initiative on that. But secondly, what is more important than just being regulatory compliant is strong banking partners, right? Being in the payment space for the last 10 years, we will tell you that a lot of time, players like banks plays an important part. We actually don't see ourselves as disrupting their business. What we see actually is in partnership that without the strong backing from banking partners, you will not be able to get this solution in push out to the wider audience itself. And we're very fortunate to work with some of the largest banking institutions out of Singapore, like DBS, Standard Chartered, and CIMB Bank, that have provided us tier 1 banking rails, and more importantly, helps to segregate the funds and provide the treasury and the deposit protection for the consumer itself. But with that two things out of the way, the next biggest thing, in our opinion, for bringing about mainstream adoption is really the real-world application, the ecosystem around the use cases of stablecoin. So what you can issue a stablecoin today? So what you can actually make the on-ramp and off-ramp work seamlessly? The market still need to find real-world application, which is what we want to love to share with you guys about 4 key areas that we've been seeing and doing over the last few years itself, right? So first and foremost is where most of these things, when people first started hearing about StraitsX itself, is what we did during the 2002 Singapore FinTech Festival, which is a marquee event every single year in Singapore in November, and we have one coming up soon. Hope to see some of you there in Singapore itself. We partner with Grab and Temasek, and more importantly with the MAS itself, to prove a concept which MAS has been pushing out called purpose-bound money. The concept here is that with the programmable nature of smart contract and on-chain transaction, you will be able to achieve what they also call compliant by design, right? Instead of having a lot of rules and audit-based system that regulated FI needs to be subjected to audits to basically enforce, we now take a lot of those governing rules and AML control and simply put it on the blockchain itself, and being able to say that whoever who are interacting with these assets itself is compliant by design. So over a 3-day event in the Singapore FinTech Festival in 2022, we got about 5,000 participants internationally, and we have more than 20,000 digital voucher in the form of NFT being issued, and more than $45,000 have been spent. So what actually happens here is that everyone in the audience will be able to use a wallet of their choice, right? So these are non-custody wallet of your own choice, be it MetaMask, be it Trust Wallet, Phantom, bring your own favorite app, right? Which really demonstrate the interoperability here. And then they will be airdropped and given digital voucher that have baked in programming that restrict the use cases, whereby you only can spend it at the whitelisted merchant, at this 12 to 15 merchants, Grab merchant at a convention hall itself. It automatically have custom denomination. It also have expiry date. So basically, after the 3 weeks event or 2 weeks event, the voucher stop completely working, right? And this is the kind of things that in the past will take months or even years to actually build, where all this custom logic needs to be built into individual wallet, which make distribution and pushing out a lot slower, can now be done in weeks, because all this logic can be baked onto a smart contract that is very interoperable to transfer around for anyone holding on to a compatible wallet. So we actually established a standard and actually proved out that this technology actually worked in partnership with Temasek and Grab during 2022 FinTech Festival. With that, over the last 2 years then, we really pushed hard on these real-world use cases and interoperability. And last year, again, during the FinTech Festival, we announced a strategic partnership with Grab and Ant International that brings about ability for tourists using the Alipay Plus app. When they come to Singapore, we'll be able to simply scan and pay at the 40,000 Grab merchants in Singapore. So we are no longer moving from just a proof of concept to a live production system that is transacting right now every single day. So this is how the experience actually works, right? So if you are a traveler coming to Singapore today, using any of the 12 international payment wallet of Alipay Plus, right? In this case, up the screen is the Malaysia app called Touch and Go, right? You will be able to scan any Grab QR code or very soon any Pay Now QR code to be able to pay. And to you, the entire experience itself, you will be as though using your own native home wallet app. You will be using Alipay or using Touch and Go. And to the merchant itself, which we have been a major acquirer in Singapore itself, they are actually just accepting GrabPay or Pay Now, right? There is no change in user experience. They do not have to re-educate the customers about, hey, you're using stablecoin, there's crypto involved, which is something that we really have a vision since the beginning. We believe stablecoin and blockchain is a back-end innovation, and we really shouldn't be explaining all this complicated stuff to the end users, right? So what happens right now is that the users will simply be able to scan, make a payment, get the real-time FX, and get on with their life, right? Which is something that is very common to all of us. But one of the major breakthroughs that we have managed to establish itself is that we have underlyingly behind the scene allow Sing dollar-backed stablecoin, XSGD, to be transacted on a transactional basis. So every time when the end user scan and make a confirmation, there's an underlying stablecoin transfer on the blockchain that settles the actual payment. Why is that important, right? Being an acquirer in the space for the last 10 years, we can share with you guys the pain and the process of actually how typically payment like this work. So let's say today you guys walk up to Starbucks and you make a payment by tapping your Visa or your scanning a QR code itself. You'll realize that payment actually seems instantaneous, but as an operator behind the scene, you realize that payment is always a two-part flow. First, you need to actually have a communication between your e-wallet app or your credit card or the EDC that's on the merchant devices itself, and then a settlement that usually happens the next day, a few days later, or even a week later, depending on the back-end system you're using, typically Swift, I just mentioned earlier on. And that itself introduced problems in terms of liquidity management for the merchant because the settlement comes later, FX fluctuation because the time from the transaction itself to the settlement itself usually have a big difference in terms of FX, and all these things brings about greater cost. So underlyingly, what we have actually piloted as a world first, in our opinion, is that now a communication is a settlement. So when you scan the Grab QR code and make a confirmation, Ali is actually helping the user underlyingly obtain a Sing dollar stablecoin instantaneously and transmitting it on chain to the Grab wallet address, blockchain address, embedded in the QR code. So settlement and communication now completes at the same time, which is a major breakthrough in this industry itself. So besides payments, right, we also have been seeing a lot of adoption in what we call RWA, real world asset tokenization itself. This is probably the next big frontier. So just this year, we announced partnership with Libera. Libera is a Standard Chartered SC-backed venture that is working on a tokenized platform that allows the tokenization of real-world assets, most commonly treasury bill, which is something that I see the largest adoption in the recent months, right? Be it the Benji or is it tokenized? Like there are a lot of assets that we are all very used to right now. They are coming on chain to be allowing the user and the market to benefit from the programmability and the instantaneous interaction that it can actually bring forward. So we have been partnering with a lot of these players to basically use and help them facilitate this kind of on-chain transaction that in the past, like I mentioned, if you buy a treasury bill, you need to probably go through a broker, only work on the weekdays itself, and there's something that now can be transformed onto a smart contract, can happen at the speed of the internet. And we are seeing an explosion in this kind of adoption itself. Last but not least, as I mentioned, as a big part of what we have been seeing is we ourselves, as a major payment institution, have been a major card BIN sponsor in Singapore itself for Visa. So we have been in the business of being a BIN sponsorship and issuing cards, Visa-backed prepaid card for a lot of clients out there. Some of the largest ones you heard about it from Singapore, like Chocolate Finance or from Hong Kong, Redot Play, are actually our clients. This is nothing new here. I think a lot of payment veterans in the space will say that this is something that we hear about it for the last 10 years. But what has changed is where we have been trying to say underlyingly stablecoin changes a lot of the playbook because it underlyingly is a technologically back-end innovation that brings about better efficiency, right? The product is still the same, but it changes the tokenomics and the unit economy behind how it works. Let me just give you a rundown why we are seeing an explosion in fintechs and companies looking to use Visas or even MasterCard to issue card that is backed by stablecoin. Because fundamentally, it changes how the cost of fund model works for them. In the past, when you issue a prepaid card, usually you have to pre-fund large amount of money with Visa itself, right? And that funds itself is the cost of fund for you, right? Now, because of using of stablecoin, you have just-in-time payment, right? Things that in the past that you say, these folks that have issued Visa card will know that Visa typically asks you to put up 2 days float or 3-day operating float to finance a lot of this card program. Then, bank doesn't work on a weekend. You can't do Swift deposit. Today, you can use a stablecoin to settle immediately. So immediately, your paid-up funds that is needed is reduced from 2x, 3x to just 1x itself. Another big part, however, is even more interesting, is the channel and the audience that you can face today. When you launch a typical prepaid card program out of a country, the next thing you need to think about is how your client is going to fund this wallet. And that in our industry is called cost of fund. And the biggest problem with that is that you're restricted to the payment channel that you open up, and each of these channels have its cost. Stablecoin and blockchain fundamentally change that. Right now, immediately by accepting stablecoin, your audience is worldwide. You don't have to think about dedicated channel per country. You immediately serve a worldwide market because worldwide folks can figure out how to get their own stablecoin. And more importantly, the unit economy has changed, right? In the past, it cost you funds for you to actually accept accept a deposit into your e-wallet app or your banking ecosystem. Now, because stablecoin on-chain is a system that user pay the fee itself, receiving this fund is cost zero for you. So fundamentally, then it creates a new model for operation where even for certain transactions that interchange is as low as like 1 basis point, it can be a profitable transaction. So because of that, we are seeing in the last 12 months an explosion in the number of stablecoin-backed issued Visa and MasterCard in the market itself. Which brings us to where I'm here today, right? Very happy to be here giving out a chat because we saw a lot of potential and excitement in the space in Taiwan itself, especially in these 3 areas that we would love to work more with the local partners and regulators alike, right? First, of course, is again in the tourist use cases. We think that this is the #1 killer feature, cross-border payments, allowing folks to be able to scan and pay and doing cross-border B2B payments are the largest use case of stablecoin. And with the regulation around the world becoming more and more mature, working with local regulators is absolutely a must, and we'd love to have a more deeper chat with our partners alike. And because of this, today, Lynn later on will be showing me up to stage. We're very happy to announce that we have also signed a partnership and MOU this morning and built a press release in partners with TBCA and with the HiveX team that we will be empowering hopefully in the coming months. You guys from Taiwan itself will be able to use a Taiwan-based e-wallet, be it Jiekou or is it Taiwan Pay. When you come to Singapore, you will be able to use the app and natively be able to scan all the 40,000 Grab merchants and the 100,000 PayNow merchants on the street without having to understand that there's stablecoin involved or having to deal with cash anymore. This is something that we'll be very excited to hope to see this thing coming to fruition, hopefully by November this year. So this is why we believe this is a game changer itself, right? Because you understand how payment systems work in the past, it usually requires a lot of bilateral agreement, B2B partnership, and maybe potentially even G2G, right? And because of the old rails, settlements are typically delayed, and there's a lot of discussion about branding, about how I need to protect my logo and placement, and a lot of compliance process that typically are very manual, and because we have to meet the standards of each other. But with blockchain and an open interoperable system, we're fundamentally seeing a shift in that a lot of issuer and acquirer, like what we see in this case of Grab and Ali, they were able to retain their brand and their users. Their users do not know that there is actually an underlying stablecoin transaction going on. And for the merchants, to them, it's actually more users, right? They do not have to change their behavior, retrain their staff. They will get a lot more adoption right now. Now the Grab merchants will be able to accept Alipay merchants without actually having to lift a finger, right? That actually is a fundamental shift in how things are working. And more importantly, from a compliance perspective, because of the open natures of the smart contract and being ability to bake in what we call compliance by design, a lot of the AML rules and control can be easily audited by regulators, and they actually can see it being enforced live at every transaction level. So this is why we feel that this will be a game changer in the industry, and a bigger part of adoption will happen in the next couple of years itself. But let me bring it back to where we are on the ground itself and talking about payments ultimately. As I mentioned, we are fundamentally a major payment institution, a regulated payment players in the industry for the last 10 years itself. So at the heart of it, if anyone has been payments itself will know that the fault tolerance is really, really low, right? So even though I'm excited about blockchain and stablecoin, I want to put it out there, it's not going to solve everything. It's definitely not going to solve cancel. So it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. And we have a long history. I'm very happy to share that we've been working with Amazon Web Services that are powering our underlying back-end cloud technology. Because for us, uptime and reliability and being compliant to local regulation have always been one of the key hallmarks of what we do. And with that, we've been seeing how the adoption of this kind of technology where blockchain and centralized system comes hand in hand together, where you use it at the appropriate area, will bring about much better value for the entire ecosystem. So we'd love to have a chat with anyone that shares excitement in this space and see how we can bring about common value and more ecosystem development. If you would love to have a chat, I'll be around at the stage. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Liu.